The psychological shift birth of refusal power. Now, imagine that you have climbed out of that gravity well. You have $20,000 sitting in your bank account. You haven't bought a Ferrari. You haven't moved into a mansion. And you look exactly the same as you did yesterday. But I can guarantee you, deep inside your brain, the chemistry has changed. This chapter focuses on the psychological shift. I call this transformation the birth of refusal power. Do you know why most people live like slaves in the workplace? It is not because they lack ability. It is because they lack the capital to say no. Let's conduct a comparative experiment. Picture two young people sitting in the same office. Let's call them Jack and Mike. Their salaries are exactly the same, and their skills are equal. The only difference is that Jack has zero savings, or perhaps even $1,000 in credit card debt, while Mike has $20,000 in cash. Now the boss walks into the office and makes an unreasonable demand. Maybe he asks them to work overtime on the weekend for free, or maybe he asks them to sell a product that is clearly defective. What will Jack do? Jack's heart rate will accelerate, and his cortisol levels will spike. His brain will instantly enter survival mode. He will think, if I refuse, the boss might fire me. If I lose my job, how will I pay rent next week? What about my car payment? Fear immediately hijacks his rationality. So even though Jack is completely unwilling inside, he will lower his head and submissively say, "Yes, boss. No problem." In that moment, Jack is not an independent individual. He is someone forced to sell his dignity because of financial fragility. Now look at Mike. Mike has $20,000. This money is enough for him to live for 6 months to a year without any income. When the boss makes the same demand, there are no sirens going off in Mike's brain. He will calmly assess the request. He can look the boss in the eye and calmly say, "I don't think that is a good idea. Can we find another way?" Or, if the request truly crosses a line, he can even tell himself, "Even if I quit right now, I will be fine." You see, this is called refusal power. Mike didn't actually quit, but because he possesses the ability to walk away at any time, he holds the initiative at the negotiation table. This is what I always say. If you cannot walk away, you cannot negotiate. That $20,000 is essentially not money. It is body armor for your personality. Psychologists have long confirmed a brutal truth. Poverty lowers your IQ. There's a book called Scarcity, and the research in it shows that when a person worries about money all day, their cognitive bandwidth becomes severely occupied. This constant anxiety is equivalent to a temporary drop in IQ of 13 to 14 points. That is worse than going a whole night without sleep. This explains why poor people often make a series of bad decisions. Why do you buy lottery tickets? Why do you take out payday loans? Why do you spend 2 hours waiting in line to save $2? It is not because you're stupid. It is because your brain is filled with the fear of survival, and you simply have no space left to make long-term plans. When you possess $20,000, the most magical thing happens. Your cognitive bandwidth is released. You no longer need to worry about next week's grocery bill, so your brain begins switching from survival mode to strategy mode. You start seeing things 3 months or even 3 years down the line. You will find that you become smarter at work, more confident in social interactions, and even your temper improves. This is not because you read some self-help book, but because you turned off that survival alarm that has been screaming in your head. Many people ask me, "Warren, what is true wealth?" True wealth is not how many yachts you can buy. It is waking up in the morning and being able to say, "I can do whatever I want today." That $20,000 is the admission ticket to this kind of freedom. Although it cannot buy a yacht yet, it has bought back the most expensive luxury in the world, your rationality and your dignity. So at this stage, even if your shoes have holes in them, even if you're driving a 15-year-old beat-up car, as long as you have that $20,000 in your account, psychologically you are already far wealthier than those driving BMWs but carrying massive car loans. You are no longer walking on a tightrope. You finally have a safety net beneath your feet. And only when you're not afraid of falling can you begin attempting difficult maneuvers, such as thinking about how to get richer. The compound interest machine, critical mass. Welcome to Chapter 3. If I didn't talk a little bit about math, I wouldn't be Warren Buffett. But I promise you, today's math lesson will not be boring. because it directly relates to when you can retire. In the last chapter, we discussed the psychological shift. Now we need to discuss the mathematical shift. The theme of this chapter is the official start of the compound interest machine. Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world, but most people fail to understand a prerequisite for compound interest. Compounding requires critical mass. Just like a nuclear reactor, if you don't have enough uranium, the reaction simply won't happen. In the world of wealth, $20,000 is that critical mass. Let's run a brutal comparative calculation. Assume you are a very smart investor, a genius in the stock market, and you can earn a 10% return a year. This is already extraordinary, because most professional fund managers cannot achieve this. If you only have $1,000 in your hand, and you work hard researching for a whole year, read countless financial reports, beat the market, and earn 10%, what is the result? $100. What can $100 do? Maybe you can take your partner out for a nice dinner or fill your gas tank twice. And then that $100 is gone. It makes no structural change to your quality of life. You still have to worry about next month's rent. Your investment return is swallowed up by the noise of life. This is why it is hard for the poor to get rich through investing. When the base is too small, the snowball of compounding simply cannot start rolling. Now, let's see what happens when you possess $20,000. The same 10% return, 10% of $20,000, is $2,000. What does $2,000 mean for many ordinary families? It could be a whole month's salary or 2 full months of rent. This is not just a difference in numbers. This is a difference in nature. When your investment income can cover a major expense in your life, like automatically paying your rent or automatically paying your car loan, magic happens. You suddenly realize you are no longer fighting alone. You have gained an invisible partner. This partner doesn't eat, doesn't drink, doesn't sleep, and has no emotions. But every year he faithfully earns back a month of freedom for you. I have a famous analogy. Life is like a snowball. The important thing is finding wet snow and a really long hill. That $20,000 is the first tight snowball core you have packed together. If you don't have this core, no matter how much snow you scatter on the hill, it will just be blown away by the wind. It will never stick together. Let's look at how this core rolls across the river of time. We will use a simple mathematical tool called the Rule of 72. Divide 72 by your annual rate of return, and that is the time it takes for your assets to double. If you put this $20,000 into a standard index fund, assuming an annual return of 7% to 10%, this means that every 7 to 10 years your money automatically doubles. $20,000 becomes $40,000, $40,000 becomes $80,000, $80,000 becomes $160,000, $160,000 becomes $320,000, and $320,000 becomes $640,000. Please note, during this process, you don't even need to deposit a single extra penny. As long as you don't touch it, as long as you let it roll down that long hill, by the time you retire, this initially insignificant $20,000 will transform into a huge sum. This is why I say, before you save $20,000, do not obsess over the rate of return. Many young people only have a few $1,000s, yet they are obsessed with options, cryptocurrencies, or those junk stocks that claim to multiply 10 times. Why? Because they feel their principal is too small, so a 10% return seems meaningless. They want a 500% return. This is suicidal mathematical logic. Precisely because you look down on that 10%, you took the risk of a 100% loss, and as a result, your principal went to zero. You have to go back to the starting line and start carrying bricks all over again. Mark my words. Before $20,000, your primary task is defense. It is about accumulation. It is about storing away every acorn the way a squirrel does. At this stage, the protection of your principal matters far more than chasing a high rate of return. You must compress that first mound of wet snow as tightly as possible by trading your time and labor and by living with extreme frugality. This stage is entirely physical. There are no shortcuts and no clever tricks. But once that snowball is firmly packed and set on a hill, the laws of gravity seem to reverse. Before, gravity resisted you as you struggled upward. Now, gravity begins to assist you as you roll downward. This is a turning point, the shift from being powered by human effort to being powered by capital. Before this line, you work for money. After this line, money begins to work for you. At first, it is only like an intern, earning very little, but it grows far faster than you expect. Now we arrive at the most dangerous and darkest chapter of this discussion, the great filter, the reward trap. If the earlier sections explain how to climb out of a deep well, this one explains how not to fall back in. I call it the great filter. In the Fermi paradox, the great filter refers to a nearly impossible threshold in evolution, a barrier so difficult that most life forms go extinct before crossing it. In wealth building, $20,000 functions as that same filter. Statistics show that many ordinary people have held $20,000 in savings at some point in their lives, sometimes even more than once. Yet most eventually end up broke. Why? Because they fail to pass through this barrier. It is a ruthless psychological trap. When you are holding $20,000, the temptation is 10,000 times stronger than when you had nothing. This is what I call the reward trap. Imagine working for 3 years, eating instant noodles daily, buying no new clothes, and finally saving $20,000. At that moment, your brain triggers a powerful compensation instinct. It whispers, "You work so hard. You are wealthy now. You deserve a reward." Coincidentally, your 10-year-old Toyota breaks down again. You pass a dealership and see a brand new, gleaming SUV. The down payment? Exactly $20,000. The voice inside you says, "Buy it. I have the money. I can afford this." This is when the filter activates. Most people fall at this exact point. They sign the check, drive the new car home, and feel overwhelming pride. They believe they have succeeded. But what I see is different. I see someone who has just destroyed the golden goose the moment it hatched. That car is not an asset. It is a liability. The second you drive it off the lot, it loses 20% of its value. Worse still, you have shattered your newly formed core compound interest. You have not merely returned to the starting line. You have added a car loan, higher insurance premiums, and increased fuel expenses. The gravity well reopens and pulls you back down. And this time, because you have tasted the comfort of a new car, enduring frugality becomes even harder. You may never get another opportunity to climb out during this lifetime, beyond your own desires. There's also an external force pulling at you. Sociologists describe this as the crab bucket effect. If one crab is placed in a bucket, it can escape. But if several crabs are inside, whenever one tries to climb out, the others grab it and drag it back down. When you save $20,000, refuse meaningless consumption, and start discussing investments instead of gossip, people around you, friends, co-workers, even relatives, grow uncomfortable. They say, "What's the point of saving? Money is meant to be spent." They comment, "Look at him. He has money but still drives a junk car. What a miser." They mock you not because you are wrong, but because your discipline exposes their indulgence. Subconsciously, they do not want you to cross that filter. If you succeed, you will enter a world they cannot access. To pass this threshold, you must accept being a little unusual. You must grow comfortable with solitude. You must learn to enjoy watching the numbers in your bank account rise more than watching your closet overflow. Charlie Munger and I have lived with such misunderstandings our entire lives. We drive modest cars, live in older houses, and eat simple hamburgers. Many assume we do not know how to enjoy life. What they fail to see is that we enjoy security. We enjoy the steady hum of the compound interest machine running day and night. So when you reach $20,000 in savings, understand this. It is the most critical moment of your financial life. This money will feel hot in your hands. You will sense it throbbing in your pocket, urging you to spend it. You must fight that temptation. You have to remind yourself, this money is not here to reward my past. It is here to buy my future. This is my seed. If you grind your seed into flour and consume it, you will never witness a harvest in your lifetime. This is the ultimate trial on the journey to wealth. It is not a test of how well you can earn, but a test of how worthy you believe you are. Do you see yourself deserving of long-term freedom, or are you only chasing short-term pleasure? If you can resist purchasing that car, If you can resist booking that expensive vacation, if you can say no to crabs trying to drag you down, then congratulations, you have passed a great filter. Congratulations. You are now officially among the top 5%. Your $20,000 remains safely in your account. It has not transformed into a depreciating SUV. Now we move into the phase of strategic execution. The specific blueprint, $20,000 to $100,000 strategy. The focus of this chapter is a precise roadmap from $20,000 to $100,000. At this stage, many people ask me, Warren, I now have $20,000. Which magic stock should I buy? Should I chase the hottest trend that's skyrocketing? My response is straightforward, and it may sound dull. If you attempt to use this $20,000 to gamble on the next moonshot, you have already lost. At this point, your mission is not to gamble, but to position yourself correctly. We must carefully allocate this precious seed capital. It needs to be divided into two sections, the bulletproof vest and the soldiers. First, take $5,000 to $10,000 and place it in a high-yield savings account or purchase the safest government bonds. This portion is your bulletproof vest. It is completely untouchable. It is not meant for investing. It is meant to buy peace of mind. Treat it as your personal insurance company. When your car breaks down, when illness strikes, or when you unexpectedly lose your job, this money will step forward and absorb life's bullets. Only with this protective armor in place can you confidently hold your investments for the long term on the battlefield of the market. Many people lose money in the market not because the market is flawed, but because they lack a bulletproof vest. When the market drops by 30% and they suddenly need cash, they are forced to cut their flesh and sell at the bottom. That is the most foolish way to fall. Therefore, the first $10,000 must sit in cash equivalents. The remaining $10,000 to $15,000 are your soldiers. For most ordinary individuals, those without insider information or professional analytical expertise, I offer only one piece of guidance. Do not search a needle in a haystack. Instead, buy the entire haystack. Seek low-cost index funds that track the broad market. Deploy your soldiers to claim the economic territory of the entire country. You do not need to analyze candlestick charts, and you do not need to chase rumors. Simply allow them to remain invested and collect the dividends of overall economic growth on your behalf. As long as humanity advances and businesses continue generating profits, this portion of your assets will gradually expand over time. However, this alone is insufficient. Relying solely on $10,000 plus the snowball in the market will indeed make you wealthy, but too slowly. You need a turbocharger. This leads to the second principle, the use of asymmetric risk. When you are broke, you cannot afford risk. But when you possess $20,000 as a cushion, you're eligible to play a game called asymmetric risk. What does asymmetric risk mean? It means your downside is limited, while your upside is unlimited. The clearest example is investing in yourself. Take $1,000, not to speculate in the market, but to purchase a course, earn a certification, or develop a new skill. If you fail to learn it, you lose only $1,000 in some time. That is a limited loss. But if you succeed, that skill could raise your monthly income by $500. That's $6,000 per year and $60,000 over 10 years. Consider it. Invest $1,000 and potentially gain $60,000. In the financial markets, no legal investment can consistently offer such a return. In human capital investment, however, this is normal. What did that $20,000 truly provide? It gave you breathing room, a buffer period during which you will not starve even if you fail. You can use this window to experiment with a side hustle, engage in trial and error, and discover a second income stream. This is the core difference between the poor and the middle class. The poor, lacking a buffer, can only sell cheap labor day after day. You, however, have a cushion. You can use money to purchase greater future earning power. At this stage, your objective is to sprint toward $100,000 as quickly as possible. As Charlie Munger says, the first $100,000 is the hardest. Yet moving from $20,000 to $100,000 is far easier than climbing from $0 to $20,000, because now you are powered by two engines, One is the compound interest engine in the market, small yet steadily turning. The other is the active income engine fueled by your self-investment. Finally, I must issue a serious warning to those at this level. Consider this my death list. On the journey from $20,000 to $100,000, there are 3 traps that can instantly send you back to zero. First, do not use leverage. Never borrow money to invest simply because you now have $20,000. Many institutions will eagerly offer you loans. Do not listen to them. Leverage will reduce your time advantage to zero. As long as the market fluctuates a little, you will be forcibly liquidated. Second, do not touch complex derivatives you don't understand. Anything that promises high short-term returns is usually a trap designed for you. Options, futures, high-frequency trading. Those are slaughterhouses for professionals, and you enter as a lamb to be slaughtered. Third, do not buy a house at this stage. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but $20,000 is too much to stretch for a down payment. If you buy a house now, you will be burdened with a heavy mortgage, and your cash flow will be locked dead. That refusal power you just gained, the freedom to say no, will instantly vanish. You will turn back into a slave to the bank, afraid to quit your job, afraid to take risks. Be patient. $100,000 is the next milestone. When you reach $100,000, the roar of the compound interest machine will be too loud to ignore. By then, you are not just rolling a snowball, you are triggering an avalanche. But now, before that, please put on your bulletproof vest, deploy your soldiers, and strive to increase your own value. Redefining wealth, the low cortisol dividend. The final chapter we are going to discuss is not about the numbers in your bank account, but about your quality of life as a human being. The theme of this chapter is redefining wealth. When you save $20,000, you might feel disappointed, because when you look in the mirror, you realize you look exactly the same. You have no luxury watch, no fancy car, and even your clothes are last year's style. But I want to tell you a secret that most people overlook. This money is paying you an invisible dividend. This dividend is called a low cortisol life. Cortisol is the stress hormone. When you have no money, when you are worried about next month's rent, your cortisol levels are chronically elevated. This hormone is slowly poisoning your body. It causes insomnia. It makes you anxious. It makes you lose your temper with your family. And it even crashes your immune system. The stress of poverty is, in fact, a chronic disease. But when you possess that $20,000 bulletproof vest, even though you haven't bought a single thing, your cortisol levels drop. You sleep better at night. You are more patient with your children. And you argue less with your spouse about money. This invisible health dividend is worth even more than the $20,000 itself. I always say money cannot buy happiness, but money can buy away a lot of unhappiness. That first $20,000 buys away exactly those nightmares that wake you up in the middle of the night. Many people think I, Warren Buffett, am happy because I possess billions in wealth. Wrong. Even if I only had $20,000 right now, I would still be happy. Because $20,000 is enough to buy my favorite hamburgers, enough to let me live in a warm house, and most importantly, enough to let me do the work I love. This leads to the final piece of philosophical advice I want to give you. Do not let money become your master. Before $20,000, money is your master. You must obey it, doing jobs you dislike and enduring bosses you can't stand. But after $20,000, the relationship reverses. You become the master, and money becomes a tool. If you save this money just so one day you can splurge like the New World Reich, then you will never be truly wealthy. You are just a poor person holding some cash. If you save this money to win control over your own time, then even if you only have $20,000 in your account, you are a wealthy person. All right, this 50-minute journey is coming to an end. Let's look back at how far we have come. We started from that dark gravity well, discussing how difficult and fragile the first $20,000 island. We talked about the psychological shift and how that money gives you the refusal power to say no in this brutal world. We talked about the compound interest machine and how that core of wet snow begins to roll. We talked about the great filter and why you must resist the temptation of consumerism and not kill your golden goose. Finally, We gave you a specific blueprint on how to put on your bulletproof vest, to pull your soldiers, and conquer that first $100,000. You see, all of this, the fulcrum that can change your entire destiny, is actually just that meager $20,000. It sounds so small, but in the eyes of those who understand, it carries the weight of a mountain. If you haven't reached this number yet, don't lose heart. Ignore those showing off their wealth on social media. That is noise. Focus on your own feet. I don't want this video to be just another piece of entertainment that you enjoy watching and then forget. I want to issue a challenge. If you are serious, if you truly want to climb out of that gravity well, I want you to write down in the comments section your current status and what you are prepared to sacrifice to save this $20,000. Maybe it's, I'm giving up coffee. Maybe it's, I'm not buying new shoes. Maybe it's, I'm starting a side hustle. Write it down. This is a contract, not with me, but with your future self. When the day comes that you actually save that $20,000, be it 3 years or 5 years from now, please come back to this video and reply to yourself, I did it. By then, you will discover that you haven't just changed your savings, you have changed the trajectory of your entire family's destiny. The game has started. Now, go win your first round.